Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode of the podcast, we've got to be honest, John, right from the top. This isn't topical. Not in any way that the listeners or viewers will see coming. Not based on a new rule set, not based on a new codex, not based off of what will do good in the algorithm. No. Purely based on very centralized and personal happenings around me that no one else will get affected by. We're going to do a whole episode. Because I want to talk about Conquest, the last argument of kings. And
Conquest!
I've been looking for an excuse to talk about it for so long that I've been almost jumping out of my skin. Because I know that doing the 40K talks were very prudent and are still prudent. I just can't though. I just can't. I'm waiting no longer. And a thing has happened in my local community where there's no might be. I don't know why I'm saying might be. Now it is finalized. There was maybe going to be a league for a long time, but now there is going to be a league. It is what it is. It's happening. And I'm decided I'm going to jump into that league. Which is a problem, because I don't know shit about Conquest, and I'm doing it anyway. Let's talk about that. First, hobby time, game split. All right, John. I definitely got that right the first time. What have you been up to, hobby-wise, other than prepping to build and paint Conquest minis?
So, the Conquest minis are next on the docket, but I've been mostly getting ready for next Joe HammerCon, which is me playing Slaves of Darkness and trying to work on that, working on lists, working on yada yada yada. I've got a new Dreadnoughty list I've been working on for Dark Angels.
Ooh, what a name.
Fun. Ooh, it's a
spicy,
nice fun
a little
name.
Saucy.
And I primed Angron and put the base codes down on Angron.
No biggie, and, just like a Demon Primarch or whatever. No big deal. Super cash. Keeping it chill.
But really, my hobby progress has fallen off a little bit recently. I had a lot of stuff happen. That's why I wasn't on the last lore video. And so I'm just starting to get back into the swing of things and try to get that creative juice back.
Mm-hmm.
Conquest is going to definitely be part of it because Joe over here is trying to sell me on joining the league with my Woodroon, which is just really not all that hard because it's orcs riding dinosaurs with Dami Mommies. So, what up?
It pitches itself.
Yeah. It's also mechanically interesting, which is, a thing I like.
Oh, no. But yeah, it's going to be a hobby time for you for sure. They're not bad minis by any means. It's just that there's a lot of them compared to what you're used to in some 5-man units. The regiments. Most of them are 12-man regiments at minimum. So, you build a lot of minis.
Yeah, and I will say I've started building some of the Conquest minis, and they're a little bit harder to build than GW kits, in my opinion. A little bit more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Not impossible, but just there's a lot of quality of life stuff missing.
Yeah.
And but I still think the sculpts look beautiful. And I think having them be for 2 games makes it a lot easier to churn through. And I think I'm going to slap chop them too, which makes it a lot easier as well.
Yeah, I think I might do slightly elevated slap chop, but I'm in that same boat with you. Something fast.
Yeah, something fast. And slap chop really lends itself to vibrant colors more, which is what I'm going to do with the Woodroon. Is a lot more brighter colors, maybe some desaturated skin, but at least the dinosaurs can be super bright.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing my normal grim dark style where things have blood and enamel washes and stuff. So
that's old hat. This is new hat. Turn it over.
I just got multiple hats.
It's true.
Many hats.
I get sick of painting the same style over and over again. When you get a new RP project, sometimes you use it as a way to just cleanse your palette of whatever style you've been slinging on a paintbrush and putting on models for like 3-4 months. It's pretty nice.
What about you? What have you been doing?
Largely the same thing, just a little more of it. I've been prepping for Joe HammerCon, which is coming up in November. It's the big last one we're going to do for the year. And I've been prepping my Lumineth, which has been just really, really fun. I hit a bit of a wall, but I've now pushed through it and am on the other side still moving. I think I'm just going to give myself a little treat of getting to paint a giant monster now. So I have the Cow Mountain built, put on a base, primed, and I just need to Zenithal highlight it to get it ready for actual painting. And progress is going there. I've also been building a lot of Conquest minis for this league. So I finished building my 1-player starter set, and now I am more than halfway through. Yeah, more than halfway through now my single-player, well, the 2-player starter set that I ordered and split with somebody, which we'll talk about later. But again, some little finagly, model-y issues in there. Like, for example, I'm building Huskarls, which are like big, beefy Viking dudes with shields. But the way the shields go on the arms, there's no attachment point. So it's just an arm and a flat-backed tower shield. And to say that that is a pain to get to set and glue is a little bit of an understatement. I got there. Just a little issues. But the big mountain Jotnar, though, went together just like I'm used to with other model, like with competitor model lines. Like, looks great, went together just fine. So just sort of knocking it out. I also did a whole lot of preparation and hobbying for a LARP that John and I went to. Had to make a whole lot of props and paint props and get stuff ready. So like a lot of my paint time went there, if I'm being totally honest. But I've also got quite a bit of my 500 point list now primed and getting ready to start painting on for Conquest. So there's hobby happening. It just felt like less hobby here than normal because, again, like my brain's just like building isn't a hobby progress, even though it totally is.
100% is.
It's a weird hang up. If it ain't painting, it's nothing. That's asinine. But yeah, now I'm just sort of looking down the barrel of getting ready to actually play Conquest, play Age of Sigmar. I don't know if I'm going to get all of the Lumineth painted before we get there, but I am now looking down the barrel of getting most of them painted at the least, and maybe still getting them all painted. And that's pretty exciting. And I might try to fit in a few of these units of these Nords, just as a palette cleanser between Lumineth models, because I've painted a lot of them. Which I like that. Big fan.
Love that for you.
But I mean, if we're going to like talk about how much Conquest progress is going on, we should probably talk about the League itself. And, what's going on with it, why I think you should join it, and maybe why Conquest as a whole is so freaking cool. Play the music. All right, John. I'm not going to be subtle. I've trapped you here in a long con. Over 100 episodes of podcasts, all to be able to leverage you publicly and shame you if you decline this invitation to play this little Dugans and Flugans model game league. It has been a long time in the making. I am a mastermind.
This is the same thing you did to me to get me to play Age of Sigmar when I only played 40k.
And you love Age of Sigmar.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Fuck you.
The longest con! Yeah, I asked myself, how do I reach these keyd? And this was my answer.
Was it 6 foot tall orc women on dinosaurs?
Oh, they're way taller than 6 feet.
Oh, hell yeah. What's up, baby?
The matriarch's gotta be over 7. She's like on top of a T-Rex. Like, she's huge. God. Make Karlach look small.
How dare.
Never mind. Episode canceled. I've pitched him already. We're done. Sold.
Sold.
But like,
don't pay no attention to the models sitting behind me that I,
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this all came up because of a league that's running near me. And truly, like, I think this league is really, really cool. And I think it's actually one that, John, you could do if you were so inclined.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I'm going to make a genuine effort to try to do it. Especially because I really need to get out and play more games with new people.
mm-hmm. And, like, this is based out of my local shop, which is in Cincinnati, which is, like, a drive for me to have to, like, cross the river and go to Ohio. But, like, Kentucky doesn't have a lot of game stores. What are you going to do?
No.
We all know this. We've talked about it on the show a lot. For people out there who are from, like, Tennessee and stuff, you know how it is. Same thing. And for John, it'd also be a bit of a drive. But, like, all right, hear me out. Here's the quick elevator pitch. Escalation League. 500 points to start with. You only have to play one mandatory game a month. There's a preset day, but does not have to be on that day. Scoring is set up with a maximum of 3 points you can gain every match. So you get 1 point for playing a game. You get a second point if you've painted at least 250 points of model during the intervening month. And you get a third point if you win. That's simple. And then all of that is totaled into your factions total, because they are telling a full-scale narrative of the factions warring with each other. And at the end, there will be a big sort of Hell in a Cell match where everyone gets together for like a faction-on-faction holler brawl.
Wheels up. Let's go.
And like, one, it is a pitch for John to like have to try to think about playing the game. But two, like, I think this is cool. Like, we'll probably just do a whole episode of like learning game systems that are new to you. But I think this is a really interesting way to try to learn it because it's so flexible. It's low game requirement, even though like you could play more games through the month. It's just your one matchup that was pulled out is the one that you actually score points for. The day is flexible, which makes it helpful for us who have to do some driving. And like, come on, you got me at a holler brawl at the end. Like, I don't know how that's mechanically going to work, but I really don't care. Like, I'm just in. I am here for it. And I think it is a hell of a way to try to learn a game, which is going to be necessary because y'all, like, I'm a jump in the deep end here. I know very little about Conquest on the whole, right? And I think this, what we want to talk about in this episode is like, one, if John is interested and why. Two, I am obviously interested in jumping into it. But why am I doing it if I know only what I have played from a single demo, watching YouTube videos on mechanics and stuff, even though there's not very many top-tier battle reports, and painting a whole new army and learning a whole new system. Like, what is pulling me in? Y'all, it's simply that Conquest is cool. We will expand on this issue, expand on this thought, but truly for me, I'm just willing to jump in because the game is so cool. I don't give a shit if I know nothing. I don't care if I don't know the competitive meta. Like, I just,
yeah, like, I don't,
it don't matter.
Like, how do I best explain the emotion around this game? It is mechanically deep in a way that I think a lot of games struggle to get to from just like what I've seen about it. But it is also so different from every other game that it naturally makes me want to play it to figure out how that works. Mm-hmm. Deployment, turn structure, even the dice rolls themselves, like how to build an army list, like all of it is so unique to its own setting that it's interesting. On top of that, the setting itself is dark fantasy, but from a high fantasy lens instead of a low fantasy lens, which is very interesting.
There's not a lot of that running around, if I'm being honest.
No.
Because, like, depending on your faction, this looks like a, like, Song of Ice and Fire battle game. Unless you're in, like, the Spires or something. But, like, Most people have very little magic, but there are just a couple factions that have a fuck ton of it. And like, how does
Like,
that suss out?
We talked about how like Conquest is cool, and let's base start with like factions we know currently exist, right? You have the 100 Kingdoms, which are basic humans who are all about doing cool magic, but also like riding horses and being very much like the Empire from Warhammer Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool. Like super rad. If you like basic humans, they are like the epitome of that.
Yeah, if you're really into
cool.
like historicals, this is very historical faction. There's some mages in there, but like mostly it's dudes with spears and horses.
Super cool. Now we're going to go to the dwarves, right? The dwarves are
the Dwagum.
Sorry, Dwagum. The Dwagum, which are basically dwarves that have...
Oh, those are fighting words.
That have like super cool guns, borderline steampunky mecha, and they harness the power of dragons to like great effect to be these like incredible powerful machines of war.
Incorrect.
And
they killed dragons, John. They killed them. That's why they're not dwarves anymore. They made. I'm gonna have a whole ass lore episode here because the cabbage. They were dwarves. They were created by dragons, and then they dug really deep and they found the god of war and were like, "Hey, what if fuck these dragons? Like, what if these lizards gotta die?
What if fuck you?
What if now I have a new buddy?" And, the god of war gave them all incredible powers, and then they used them to like put a howitzer through the dome of almost all the dragons, and free their whole society. And everyone who didn't want to be free from dragons, they killed them.
It's like the Battle of Blair Mountain, but for, dragons and dwarves.
And eventually you turn on your own. Like, it's fucked. Like, the Dwagum lore is awesome. So they don't use the power of dragons. They use the power of the god of war to kill dragons.
All right, heavy metal album cover.
Yeah,
we're gonna go on.
Cover. I'm here for it. Yeah.
We're gonna go on to 100 Kingdoms, Old Dominion, which are like an ancient human race, like the ancient humans, who then became necromancers and tried to become gods, and like a bunch of shit happens. Like, it's really deep. It's really hard to explain, but they're basically, if you mix the Ottoman Empire with necromancers with like angels and demons. Very cool. Very awesome. Yeah. Very unique take on like necromancy faction.
Yeah, instead of normally just like normal zombies, they are way cooler. There's probably some art flying around. But yeah, the TLDR for them is that they were an ancient race, that they are very Ottoman inspired, plate mail and stuff like that, but not like big plates, but like little lamellar segmented armor. The Kanataroi, I'm blanking on all of the uniformations. And they had a society where they worshipped this god, this divine being who was like a god of death and life. And as the god started to slip a little, they decided that they were going to put down their god and they were going to slay her. It did not go well. No. This faction is the aftermath, which is why it's all horrific.
Yes. And then, you go from that to a much more fucked up situation, which is the Spire. The Spire are aliens, y'all.
The literal aliens. Literal
aliens.
Literal aliens.
That have dropped onto this fantasy universe and fucked everything up with their weird fleshcraft experiments.
Oh my god. It's like, I know a lot of people are like, it's just space elves, but no, they're fucking not. This is Hellraiser.
No.
This is closer to Hellraiser than it is elves.
Yes.
They are from beyond existence and want to experience.
Yeah, it is absolutely insane. Like, it's really hard to explain them until you see their models and then listen to some of the lore and go, wow. And the Spire are integral into the faction I'm playing, which is Rune. A race of orcs that were built and bred to be like the defensive, like the warlike race for the Spire, and then eventually through a bunch of different things were able to break away from them and start forming their own like tribes. And there's a bunch of other stuff that happens after that, and then they make friends with dinosaurs, and it's super cool. But they wouldn't have even been made if not for the Spire. And it's interesting the way all of that pans out. And then after that is what, Nords?
Well, I guess we could talk about the city-states. And then,
city-states.
city
Which I don't know a whole lot about city-states. I'm sure you do.
So the city-states were ancient humans, much like those of the Old Dominion, but a neighboring city they're very Greek, like it's on the nose, who saw what was happening in the Old Dominion and decided to try to do something about it before the shit hit the fan. And there's a whole lot of deep lore there, but one or two people figured out the secret of divinity, and that you can make gods artificially if you are careful and you understand the machinations behind a god, and that it's really just like ideas made manifest, but you need a shard to hold it. And the whole point of the city-states was that they were going to make these handful of artificial gods that they would put at the center of these cities to be bastions of order, using a combination of like a religious council and a scholarly council and then a popular vote of the people, and that in perfect harmony these gods would all stay balanced. But just before they got to the end of implementing this plan, the people who knew what happened both died. And the god, one of them tried to turn themselves into a god to like set things right, and it did not. And all of these cities became imbalanced in unique ways. Some of these three pieces have more powers than the other pieces, and things got weird and bad in unique ways. So now they look like Roman soldiers going to war, but some of them are like religious zealots. Some of them are more like science-y, morally corrupt people. Others are like popularist for the people, but they are in a political deadlock and languishing because of it. It's a cool faction. They have giant god constructs of like Hephaestus and Poseidon. It's awesome. It's so cool.
And then the Vikings, also known as Nords, your faction.
I love them.
Go ahead.
It's gonna again. It all goes back to the Spires. Okay, 80% of Conquest lore is the Spires are aliens from beyond existence. They love fucking around and creating absolute devastation for other species. Lol, get good, scrub. I don't care about your suffering. And then millions of years later, stuff happens. The Nords, I will tell it from the Nords' perspective. They are people who are from the frozen north, who are living in a post-apocalypse. Ragnarok was going to happen. There were many soldiers who were like taken from the common folk up to what they believed to be the Tree of Life, to be made into these incredible warriors, to fight for the gods, to stop the Jotuns from enslaving humanity. And then when all of that was supposed to happen, it didn't. They didn't wake up. The gods fell. The war was over before it even began. Everyone was enslaved by Jotun for who knows how many centuries, until eventually, out of these crypts, some of these huge, buff, unhinged warriors who were supposed to be working for the gods as their great warriors came out of the crypts. And they started to kill the Jotuns. But they weren't really capable of ruling a whole lot, because they were shape-shifting and changing, and their bodies were rough. And then all of the people started to also have weird lineages of like monster people, or ogres, or trolls. Oh, troll lore. And all of their bloodline carries a curse. And now they are just trying to take this curse that's stuck in this frozen wasteland and bring everyone together from these disparate groups to go raid the Southlands so everyone can survive. But what they don't know is they're wrong. Like, all of the gods are just the spire. It's just the spire. The Tree of Life is a spire tower. The people who were taken to go become, like, the gods' warriors, they were test subjects. And Loki, the god who betrayed the other gods, was just a spire guy. One dude. Who just betrayed everyone else. And because of that, forgot all of these test subjects sleeping in the ground, and now they have woken up. But they are not finished subjects, so they are unstable.
Shame.
And this whole society has just created a religion around it.
Shame.
And now I just want to do a lore video. But like, that's one of the things that drew me to this is I started reading lore first. Because of course I read lore first. And it's all nutty. It's absolutely nutty.
Before you go on a tangent about lore, we also got to talk about the newest faction.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, I just did a tangent on lore.
Yes. But the Sorcerer Kings, who are... Well, there's not a lot of lore about them because they're not formally released yet. They're very cool. And I don't really want to go into what they actually do because, again, we don't really know a ton. But what I do want to touch on is that how this faction came across was not decided by some like board behind scenes of what's going to sell the most models. It was voted on by the community of what they wanted to see be the next faction. Mm-hmm. Which sort of brings me into a small tangent of my own of talking about how this company seems to push community first with how they run events, how they interact with it, like do all the things around the game, which is very, very good and is unique in the wargaming sphere kind of right now, which is exciting because like I love the idea that you vote for a new faction or like stuff that happens with your games propels the lore. Like you're talking about this Escalation League where at the end of it, where all of our battles accumulate into a big story at the end. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Like that kind of stuff is amazing. And you're starting to see that in things like 40K. But like when it's done by such a smaller company in like a smaller game, it feels way more impactful, especially because they can take the crazy risks. I mean, they just literally wrote Vikings as weird test experiments from aliens. Like it's bizarre, but it works and it's super cool.
Like that'd be like if you were watching the show Vikings from History Channel, right? And then somewhere around season 4, you find out it's actually a sequel to the movie Hellraiser, like canonically. and they hit you with that hard right turn just at the end. And it worked.
Yeah, imagine that landing.
And it worked. That's impressive. That takes chops. And their community first sentiment, I think, is part of what really kind of draws me to this. Because like it extends to stuff like the rules and the app. Because both are free. Both free. You want the rules? Click download. Get the rules. You want to get the app? Click download. Boom. You have the app. They update it regularly. You don't have to pay anything. You can have an account to have your list. You can export your list to QR codes or send them to tournament organizers or whatever you want. Also, it's really nice that like when you click upgrades and stuff, like let's say you have a character stat that has 5 attacks normally, and then you give them an upgrade for, you know, the giant sword of awesome that gives them plus 3 attacks. The attack stat will no longer be 5. When you go back to their profile, it will be 8. It will change it for you. So like there's a bunch of little quality of life stuff in this app that makes it even nicer. And the fact that I don't have to pay anything to get those rules or to list build. 10 out of 10.
Super fun.
Love that. Really.
I also love that they release the rules for all of the faction together. Mm-hmm. Even if they don't have all the models out. So you can proxy if you want to. But like, to be honest, I don't find myself wanting to proxy if the model exists because all of the models look fucking awesome. Like, even for factions I don't have an interest in playing, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's super cool. That's on the tin. Like, the Dwego models look awesome. I'm not going to play the faction, but I cannot wait to tear them apart with a T-Rex. I'm about it. Let's go.
It's true. It's true.
It's going to be a time.
And from a small company, like, I would imagine I would judge their models less harshly normally, but, like, I just don't need to. They stand up pretty well.
Yeah. They're great.
You know, of course, if you look at their oldest models and compare them to like competitors' newest models, yeah, there's going to be some disparity. But like compare their oldest models to their competitors' oldest models. Wow, are we leaps and bounds ahead of some of the stuff I have been sold by other companies? Like I think the models look good, especially the big monster models. Mountain Jotnar, incredible. I just put it together.
The Apex Predator.
And reasonably priced. Truly. Really reasonably priced. Which is another thing that, like, I wish I did not have to mention on the show. But let's be honest, we all got limited hobby dollars. None of us are out here like getting bankrolled by a colossal corporation or anything. Like, we all have a certain amount of money we can spend a month on little mini toys, and if you could get more minis for the same price, worth mentioning. It works well for me.
Yeah, and I want to touch on a thing that has me super interested in the game, and really what's kind of hooked me and kept me coming back to it every week to at least watch a video on Conquest, right? Like, that is pulling me towards playing this. And to be honest, if you and I lived like down the street from each other, this would already be a thing we'd probably be doing every week. I can feel it in our bones. Collectively, like our collective bones are about it. Like mechanically, the game is so unique because you have to like, it is alternate activation instead of turn. I turn, your turn, I turn, your turn. And there are cards you use to try to plan out your turn while your opponent is trying to plan out their turn of like activations. And like, I know you hear that and you're like, oh wow, that's very different. Yeah, but it doesn't end there. It also, you don't deploy with everything on the table. You deploy over time, depending on the classification of the unit, light, medium, heavy, like what is it? It determines when it is more likely to be on the table. And so instead of having 5 turns, you have turns that are sort of like setup turns and like positioning turns, which really captures the concept of playing an army or a war game where you are trying to outposition your opponent, not just beat them to a pulp.
Yes.
Right? Like, the game isn't just stand on circles and like alpha strike somebody that other games can be if the power levels aren't balanced. You can outplay somebody even if your faction isn't performing the best simply from positioning in this game because it is so integral into the balance of the game itself. And that's awesome. Like that puzzle of tactics is vastly interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it provides a whole nother dynamic that really, for me, sells me as this is a game to play in addition to the games I currently play. There's a lot of games that come out that are like, okay, but this is too close to Age of Sigmar, or this is too close to 40K when I already play those games and don't intend on quitting.
Yes.
And this is so divorced from those entirely that I can see if I really, really enjoy playing this hand over fist constantly, that it might just become a part of like oh no, this is one of my like pillar games that I play all the time. Really, I think the only quibble I have with it is that I don't necessarily think this is an easy game to get into if you are new to wargaming.
I think that's true.
I think things like Age of Sigmar and 40K have the benefit of being larger, more available, and just sort of a little bit easier to get into from a rules standpoint, even if the rules can be dense on the higher ceiling level. This game, that floor is really high. And then the ceiling is only a little bit higher than that. Whereas a lot of games like 40K and Age of Sigmar, the floor is really, really low, but the ceiling is extremely high, which creates pros and cons for new players. So if you're tactically minded, like play a bunch of Total War games, this is absolutely for you. But if you don't really like tactical games,
this could be rough.
It could be rough. Like, I'm not saying don't try it. What I'm saying is maybe try a demo before you spend $400.
Yes. And even if you want to just buy a handful of models, the nice thing is that they do have split boxes that are really, really reasonable. Not only in price, but I mean in like how you split them. Like, for example, in 40K, if you get one of the starter box, like 10th edition starter box, you're going to get sprues for Space Marines. You're going to get sprues for Tyranids. Okay. If you're splitting them with a buddy, one of you gets the Space Marines, one of you gets the Tyranids. Cool. Awesome. Who gets the one rulebook? I don't know. Do you knife fight for it? Like, they know it's a split box, but you get one rulebook. What? Okay. There might be some extra gewgaws in there, measuring sticks and stuff. Is there ever doubled up of them? Usually not. Who gets those? All right, tactic cards. You're going to need them. Do you each get tactic cards? No? Only one of you gets tactics cards? Like, how do you split those? And here, Conquest just gives you 2 of everything. Like, I just split it with a buddy of mine at the shop. And it was the easiest box split I've ever done. Like, oh, here's my spruce. Here's your spruce. Here's my rule book. Here's your rule book. Like, here's my cards. Mm-hmm. Here's your cards. Hey, we're done.
I think the other thing to talk about when it comes to value, because that's like value for money, right? Is that when you get Last Argument of Kings models, right? Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, which is their war game. It is their like rank and flank battalions of soldiers, which is battalions of soldiers game. All the models you get, except for like the big monsters, are usable in their second game, First Blood, which is their skirmish game of the individual models fighting the other individual models. That's amazing. Like the fact that you do get 2 games with this. Now, I don't know basically anything about First Blood. But I am more likely to play that because I don't have to fucking buy anything for it. Like, I can just be like, hey, Joe, we're playing Conquest all Saturday. I showed up on Friday early because I just am like that. Do you want to play a game of First Blood? And we can just do that. And watch a movie, and it'd be fine.
Through the app. Like, we could not watch the movie through the app, but, like, build the list and stuff through the app. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Mm-hmm. It's really good. Also, this one is for the tactical-minded people out there. The build variety in some of these little kits is a little nutty to me. And I will admit, I'm kind of shook by how much there is. Okay? I'm going to talk about a single hero as an example. I'm sure there are others out there. I only know a little bit because I only really know the Nords, and even then I only know the stuff I have. So there's probably other examples or better examples, but this is the example I have. The Nords, there's a hero called the Blooded, okay? There's probably a picture of him up on the screen. The Blooded, okay? He looks like a pro wrestler. He's cool as hell, okay? He's a dude, big muscles, big long hair, giant sword. Awesome. It's very cool. You get him in one of the starter kits. And you look at him and you go, man, that dude probably swings a sword really hard. And you're right. You can have him swing a sword real hard. You can give him a extra cool sword. You could give him the Mark of the Wolf so he gets extra attacks and he swings even harder. You could give him some armor to where he can duel people and they can't refuse him. Yeah, he could be a real nightmare melee little support utility piece mixed in with a bunch of dudes. Okay, cool. That same hero you can take and through a change in relics, make him an absolute nightmare of a ranged threat by putting him in a unit of archers, as he is essentially throwing javelins at the enemy units, as well as all of his archers shooting, to give them move and shoot, to give him bonuses to shooting, or essentially lethal hits. Now your sword dude can also be a terrible, terrible ranged archer dude, who's super scary, and a problem. That's cool. That's cool. You can play him in 2 totally different roles. But we're not done. Because my favorite, absolute best piece, there's a upgrade for this character called the Mark of the Vargear, which means you pay 10 points, he's a goddamn werewolf. He's a werewolf. That's the upgrade. He's a werewolf. You pay 10 points. He's a werewolf. You put him on a bigger base. He no longer can run around with humans because he's a werewolf and he's so big and cool. So now you get to put him in with big brutes. So you get to put him in with monsters because he's a werewolf general now. And that gives him extra attacks. It gives him extra rend. It gives him some extra movement. But you know what he can't do? He can't buy tactical retinues anymore because you know what werewolves don't have? Dudes with pretty colored banners running around behind them. You can't do it. Werewolves don't like it. No banners. It's in the folklore. Google it. Don't at me. I love that it's a little throwaway thing. It's a 10-point thing you can do. And all of a sudden, it's change these 3 stats. You get these upgrades. You cannot buy these upgrades. And what you cannot do, or should do is all determined by flavor of just thinking, what would happen if a dude was a werewolf? That's amazing. That's so cool. And that's one hero. Built in 3 totally different fucking ways.
Yeah. And sure, there's one model for that guy, right? But you can make proxies, and they even tell you to do it if you want to. But you don't have to. Like, you can take that same model and play it 4 separate ways or something like that, and it's legal without having to change anything. Because it's all just in the app, and you just tell somebody what it is, and they can look at a QR code and be like, oh, yeah, that's what that dude is. Cool. Like, super easy to play with. And I think playability really matters in these games. I think that's something we have learned over the last, 2 years of the last couple of editions of both AOS and 40K is when the game loses playability.
Yeah, it's true.
It's easy for us to play games that have a harder playability because we're weird and have a podcast on Wargames. But if you only play games with your buds and you don't invest a shit ton of time in understanding them, you're going to be meh, I got other shit I can do with my time.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So that's important.
Especially a game that's kind of tactically dense. The more you can do to take memorization and technical stuff out, the better. Because then it leaves your brain space free for the stuff that matters.
It's also the game seems to play mostly around what are good decisions, not what are gamey decisions, right? An example I can use is that often in other war games you have abilities that you use that will give you gotchas on your opponent. What you're really testing is not your ability to necessarily make good decisions in the face of your opponent also making good decisions, but you're making decisions based off how much information you got ahead of time. Instead of what information do I have on the field right now, right? This is a situation laid out in front of me. Did I die in list build phase? That's a problem we're currently running into with Age of Sigmar, with battle tactics. It's not necessarily a problem here. You can play your way out of a hole, which I think is important in a game.
Mm-hmm. And all of this is stuff that's fairly surface level. Again, I played one demo with our local Vanguard who was very cool, very kind. And I'm in. I'm sold. I've watched a number of videos, I've watched a number of battle reports, I've listened to a whole lot of 2+ Toughs lore videos, and then went to their site and just read the lore verbatim. The only thing I'm really upset about is that there are no novels for me to read this lore. Not their fault. Small company. Just, I would be that. It's so good. I'm that interested. I would read one.
The real question is, are you interested enough that you would write your own lore for this? Would you write your own narrative stuff?
Already am. I'm already there. Yes. Absolutely am. You telling me I can make a dude a werewolf that's struggling with being messed with by gods long before? The narrative fluff runs for years. It's just, there's so much there. There's so much there.
Yeah. And I think we're starting to get to the end here. We could just continue rambling about this forever. And if you really want us to continue rambling about Conquest, please let us know.
I will.
I think that we are really into this.
I'll spin this hat around backwards and do a lore video right this second.
We're about it. And we would love to make more content around Conquest. Really, truly, we would. The lore is interesting. The game looks interesting. We are going to play it.
John, so I have your firm commitment. League time? Are we doing league time? Are you doing the league? Doing the league right here in front of the people?
90% there.
The people want to know, John.
There. 90% there.
Is this your favorite league on Citadel? Got him.
But we want to keep doing it, right? So subscribe, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
All that shit.
I will say, your response to this, people out there in listener land, it will probably determine how much more of this we actually talk about on the channel and how soon.
Yes.
If people don't want to hear it, fine. We'll just be passionate about it and play it more on our own. Maybe follow up on the league later on and just in passing. But if people really want to hear more, there could be faction focuses. Maybe some self-written narrative content.
But for narrative content, I do want to give a shout out, right? So I would not be this interested in Conquest at all if it was not for 2+ Tough and Doug. We'll post a link down below.
Oh, yes.
We told you to go there before for stuff like AOS lore. But really, for Conquest lore, he is the best guy that I have found. give him a shout, like give him a listen to. He's got a whole playlist for it that is just all Conquest lore. It's all great. He's a wonderful man. Listen to his stuff. Tell him we sent you if you want to. I don't really care, as long as you listen to his stuff, because I think it's great. Like, just go listen to 2 Plus Tough talk about Conquest. It got me in. It'll get you in too.
Yes, please. And we will be over here waiting for we're going to see one comment and someone like, yeah, I guess it's kind of okay. Like, pop, pop, start the machine. Like,
Joe's be searching the comments on YouTube. He's just send me a message at 3 a.m. because he's going to get a notification going, get in the fucking chair. We're doing this thing.
Assmaster X9X96969 exclamation point said Conquest seems kind of cool, and I quote. Like, not to disparage Assmaster X9X96969 exclamation point, of course. This is parody. For now, that's been all of our opinions. Bona fide and Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all in the next one.
I'm going to get suplexed by a 7-foot tall orc mommy.